Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. My name is Rabbi Neil from Temple Beth Shalom. We're gathered here in an act of celebration and memory, and we want to be sure that we can focus on that. And so therefore I ask everyone now, please pull out your cell phone and turn it off. It's always the person who thinks, I turned mine off, I put it on silent. It's always their phone that rings. And it's embarrassing for them, and people get frustrated, and we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So even if you think, I'm sure I turned it off, please pull it out and check, because one person definitely didn't. I've been doing this 20 years, we know that. Our celebration today is going to be led by Carolyn Silver. Before Carolyn comes up, I just want to share very quickly. Jacob Rudin once wrote that when we are dead and people weep for us and grieve, let it not be said that life was good to us, but rather that we were good to life. And I think that's a particularly appropriate quotation today. I invite up Carolyn, who's going to lead our commemoration today.
Welcome. We're here to celebrate a life of a woman who roared. Claire knew exactly how to grab life, and she did. She was strong, never backing down from what she believed. She was insensitive. She was sensitive about what she believed in. Always up for a good fight, always up for a challenge, always up to intellectually challenge you, always strong. She was also sometimes invincible in her jobs, in parking RVs. She was a person who loved women and carried that flag proudly. As you listen to these stories today, I want you to think about your own life, your own strength, your own ability to live so fully and be charged and inspired by her life.
Hi, y'all. Thanks, Rabbi Neil. Thanks, Rabbi Carolyn. And thank you all for joining us today from all over the country, my wonderful family. First, long before there was I Love Lucy, Claire's parents were Fred and Ethel. Her first years were spent with her parents, her sister, who was 11 years older than her, living with her grandparents and Uncle Buck in a large house in Baltimore. Her grandfather had been mayor of the city in the early days of last century, and her grandmother had been a concert pianist and an oil painter. Her older sister was a perfectionist at birth. Much different than the spirited imp that we came to know and love. One of the first phrases that young Claire learned was, all by selfie. And that was kind of the mantra for her whole life. Murray married at 18 when Claire was 7. Guess who became the apple of everyone's eye, doted on by everyone? Do you remember when people used to come by with a pony and parents would put their kid on the pony and take a picture? Well, Fred popped Claire on the pony, and that sealed the deal. She was hooked for life. When her grandparents passed away, the Fulenwider clan moved to rural Baltimore. They built a home on several acres of land, including a barn and a pasture. Well, young Claire learned to drive a tractor and how to back it up. When she got to high school, her dreams came true because Claire got a horse. She'd get up early, muck the stalls. The family also raised a steer that Claire tended when they sold it each year to fund a horse. So she'd get up early in the morning, muck the stalls, feed the critters, and get ready for school. She'd rush home after school, saddle up, and head out to roam the wooded countryside until dark, stopping at neighbors' houses, collecting cookies and milk, and chatting with everyone she met along the way. She later marveled at the trust her parents had in her. Claire learned everything possible about horses. She studied the history of the horse. She visited stables nearby. She could talk about bloodlines and sires ad infinitum. At 15 years old, she was almost on the $64,000 question for her knowledge about horses, and that love never subsided. When we moved to Santa Fe, Claire was a wrangler at Harold's Broken Saddle stable, leading trail rides for several years through the Cerritos Hills. She even took me out on rides. Claire spent 2 years teaching on the Navajo and Hopi reservations in Tuba City, Arizona, after college. She was so beloved by her high school students. When the kids and we returned 20 years later, her now adult students turned out in droves to meet us. They toured us around their homes. They introduced us to their spouses. They regaled us with stories about the tricks they played on Miss F. They also awed us with the story of how she bailed out one of their native classmates out of jail after she rode with them in a paddy wagon and saved him from being beaten by white police officers when he'd had too much forbidden alcohol after a Friday night football game. Do you remember the film Trains, Planes, and Automobiles? Well, in addition to horses, Claire loved automobiles, RVs, and boats, and we enjoyed many of them over our years together. She loved to be on the move, with the windows down, hair blowing, gravel roads spitting up rocks, zooming over streams on Forest 2 tracks. We had a lawn tractor at the cabin, and she was delighted to get back there every year, running down the tall grasses that tried to overtake the wildflowers and tried to overtake the paths to the water, and whether showing our guests the wild and scenic Wisconsin River, or pulling Nelson behind the boat in an inner tube, or quietly fishing the nooks and crannies. We spent 33 summers there. in paradise with the state bird, the mosquito. And then we'd return to the paradise of New Mexico, where she loved hiking and camping throughout all of this state and almost every state in the country and through much of Canada. Claire also found time to work. She'd been a social worker in Maryland where Nathan and Nina came along. Of all her many accomplishments, I believe they made her the most proud. She loved being a mother and later a grandmother. She completed her PhD in Madison in political science with a statistical analysis of women's political behavior. She was there when Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House and when Ronald Reagan took them down. Claire became an expert on energy efficiency when she was at UW. She was also part of the founding of Women's Studies. And she was part of a group of feminists who founded NOW. Gloria Steinem served her tea in Washington, D.C. at an organizing meeting. She was also a founding member and co-chair of the New Harvest Foundation in Madison, which supported lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender youth. She was a woman who made good things happen. Post-PhD, Claire directed Madison Gas and Electric's marketing department. She was a woman in a man's world of energy, and she supported the company's vision, convincing a world of engineers and the public that using less energy was good. And that was a hard sell. By using less, fewer power plants would needed to be built to serve more homes and businesses. Claire traveled to India, Egypt, and then to Australia, teaching energy efficiency in emerging economies. Once she was trapped in India, it was a close call when the pneumonic plague struck and the U.S. recalled all citizens. On another trip, we were speaking on the phone when an earthquake hit Jaipur, and it shook her hotel while we were talking. I asked her to please stop these dangerous consulting gigs. She considered retirement. Ha, ha. We're talking about Claire Fulenwider. The first time she failed retirement, she accepted the CEO position with the Northwest Energy Efficiency Coalition in Portland, Oregon. They were a coalition of utilities in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Montana, formed to develop strategies for more efficient energy usages of waterways, wind, and other sources in the Northwest. This was decades after she had left the energy efficiency field, and she was certain she was too old and they wouldn't hire her. Well, we packed up everything and moved to Washington State. And a colleague there, who was a leader in her own organization, said, Claire's astute, warm leadership style motivated her board and her team to expand and increase their impact. They doubled the staff and the budget while she was CEO. It was clear through her work ethic and strategic approach that she loved the world and wanted to make a dent in the universe. She persistently showed her humanity and that it was possible to lead with optimism and drive for a better future. Her second fail at retirement, which really wasn't a fail, was starting a totally different career, financial planning. Claire had always had a head for numbers. This job was portable. She pursued it in Santa Fe and Madison. She traveled around New Mexico to meet her clients, while other planners did this job over the phone. And the funny thing is, it corresponded well with my work at the public education department because we took our RV with us all over the state. It was a win-win. And in Santa Fe, she chaired the American Cancer Society annual gala. How prescient. And she served on the Community Foundation LGBT board for the Envision Fund, long before it was called the Envision Fund. Claire was a unique person. I describe her as a unicorn. I never met anyone like her. She was so bright, so friendly. She could talk to anyone and always be herself. Whether discussing local crops with the farmers at the feed store in rural Wisconsin, or talking dogs with the governor of Montana, or introducing me to the interview committee in Portland, the interview committee, as her wife. Claire was always her authentic, amazing self. Her sense of humor lightened many tense situations, and she blessed people by affirming others as they were.
I was told to keep the microphone high. Hello, for those of you who haven't met me, I'm Nina, Claire's daughter. Many of you know her as a coworker, a friend, or a force of nature. I knew her simply as Mom, big on unconditional love, chores, and very ambitious outings. If I had to describe Mom's aura in a song, it would be Helen Reddy's I Am Woman. Mom was a feminist and a trailblazer. She rose through the ranks of the male-dominated utility industry, and she did it with grit, confidence, and zero patience for nonsense. She always reinforced that I could be anything I wanted to be when I grew up and passed a little bit of that grit down to me. Mom had absolute confidence that she could do anything she put her mind to. And once an idea entered her head, well, there was no such thing as eventually. If you heard her say that down the road she might like to do something, what she actually meant was, brace yourselves, within 2 weeks that plan would be executed or at least aggressively underway. Exhibit A, the cabin. Exhibit B, the boat. Exhibit C, the RV. Exhibit D, the next RV. Well, you get the picture. Mom firmly believed in work before play. Weekends always started with Saturday morning chores, no exceptions, followed by an outing. Chores might include working in the garden, stacking wood, you'll hear about an incident from my brother in a little bit, or vacuuming the house. The outing might be fishing, hiking in a state park, or just a drive in the country, which somehow took all day. Mom loved a good local hardware store, so either the chores or the outing would require a stop at the local Ace Hardware. For vacation, camping trips in the Boundary Waters or on a road trip and canoe adventures were part of the regular repertoire. One year, Mom invited her grad school friend Linda, who had never been camping, to the Boundary Waters with us. This was a canoe across the lake to the campsite, set up your tent, and cook over a fire kind of camping, not the drive your RV up and plug it in kind of camping. As luck would have it, it was pouring rain when we arrived at the lake, and the entire time we were setting up camp, and the next day. We were soaked to the bone, cold, damp, and miserable. Mom kept saying we were having a great adventure as she tried one more time to adjust the tent to keep the water from flowing in. It did eventually stop raining, but that marked Linda's first and last camping trip. Mom also loved to dance. I have many memories of outdoor festivals in Madison where Mom would foxtrot and cha-cha with complete strangers, young, old, and everyone in between, with the biggest smile on her face and absolutely zero concern for what anyone thought. She felt deeply, empath that she was. I remember often her telling me, "Go put on a sweater, you're making me cold." She genuinely loved learning other people's histories and had an incredible gift for making people feel seen and welcomed. Once you were in Mom's orbit, you were in. In difficult times, Mom stayed present. Whether it was listening after a hard moment, caring for me after a surgery, or standing by me through a cancer diagnosis, she showed up fully, fiercely, and without hesitation. When by 35, I had no marriage prospect at the ready and was facing a surgery that would prevent me from having biological children, she fully supported my decision to become a single mother by choice, one of the best decisions of my life, and never once questioned my strength or independence. And laughter. Mom had a quirky yet infectious sense of humor. At least once during every visit, the entire family would be sitting at the table uncontrollably laughing. I mean, not just chuckling, but like eye-watering, belly-aching, you have to pee your pants kind of laughing. There would be a moment's lull, and then someone looked at someone else, and then we would all start laughing all over again. And now all it takes is for one of us to say that trigger word, and we'll all be laughing. As for her only grandchild, Nelson, Mima pulled out all the stops for him. She planned train rides, boat rides, museums, and national park trips with junior ranger programs, among many outings with Nelson. Somehow, too, all the rules that I remember from childhood no longer applied to Nelson. He didn't need to do Saturday chores. The outing would just begin right after breakfast. He wanted dessert, even though he didn't eat all his dinner. Of course he could have dessert. The toy in the gift shop, of course she would buy that for him. Mom wanted to shower Nelson with as much love as possible. When she was first diagnosed with her cancer, she said she really wanted to make it to Nelson's high school graduation. Well, I believe that motivation helped her fight the cancer well past the doctor's expectations. She did all she could to smile through the pain and made it to Baltimore in June to watch Nelson get his high school diploma. Mom wanted nothing more than for her children and grandchild to be happy. She supported us in all of our choices, even the ones about which she knew we'd eventually change our minds. And she was usually right, but gracious enough not to say, "I told you so." She understood that some lessons can't be taught, only lived, and she cheered us on through every step. Mom lived life to the fullest, no regrets. My hope for all of us is that her memory nudges us, or maybe shoves us, to live boldly, to say yes more often, to unapologetically embrace our authentic selves, and to finally go do that thing we've been talking about down the road. Because if Mom taught us anything, it's that down the road starts now.
Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep, by Mary Elizabeth Fry. Do not stand by my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am the thousand winds that blow. I am the diamonds glints in snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. As you awake with morning's hush, I am the swift, upflinging rush of quiet birds in circling flight. I am the day transcending night. Do not stand by my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
We're here today to celebrate the life of my mother, Claire Fulenwider, and I want to share some of the elements of her life that have had an impact on mine. She loved the outdoors, which included hiking, camping, boating, bird watching, and of course, fishing. These things were instilled upon me from as soon as I could walk. Wherever we went, usually included a hike, and we were able to experience many wonderful places because we took the trails less traveled. We did a lot of camping. We camped in Wisconsin, in the Boundary Waters in northern Minnesota, and across the country on road trips from Maryland and Virginia to Utah and Colorado, often bringing our friends along, some of whom had never camped, and who may never have camped again. Accommodations started with a tent and moved up to a pop-up trailer, and then, after Nina and I were grown up, she progressed to a truck camper, then a fifth wheel, and finally to a Class A RV, and she loved every minute of it. She loved having a boat and would spend as much of her time on the water as she could. She adapted to the challenges of launching and landing a boat in some crazy winds and currents without many mishaps. She was great at reading the water, literally and figuratively, in what life presented. She loved bird watching and had an amazing list of species that she could readily identify. We always had bird feeders to encourage birds to hang out around the house, and she always carried her binoculars with her in case she had the opportunity to see a special bird, which always brought her joy. Her true love was fishing. Nina and I had fishing rods in our hands as soon as we could hold them. I remember Nina's first fish down in Florida on St. Pete Beach when we were on the breakwater, and Nina was complaining because her fishing pole was getting heavy. I realized later in life that Mom's skills were average, however, enthusiasm was exceptional, and we almost always ended up catching fish. We also taught many people to fish and to experience the excitement of feeling something unknown, tugging on the line, the thrill of bringing something unknown from the depths. Her adventurous side led her to accepting a high school teaching position in Tuba City, Arizona on the Navajo Nation after graduating college. She did that for 2 years and made many friends, had some amazing experiences there. We were lucky that she took many photographs as slides of her adventures and would present a slideshow to our elementary classes about life on the reservation. There were many beautiful and heartfelt images captured and shared with great backstories. Mom was an empath. She always felt what others were going through, even from afar, and always cared. She was also very calm and collected in emergencies and was a level-headed thinker. Her early days as a lifeguard probably etched this into her psyche. On one occasion, Mom and Harry had taken my friend Gibby fishing on the Wisconsin River while I built some outside stairs at our cabin. About 30 minutes later, I hear the boat coming back, and Mom yelling, "Get the whiskey!" Turns out Gibby got a fish hook stuck in his thumb while he was trying to get a smallmouth bass off his line. She gave Gibby a shot of whiskey, poured some on his thumb, and called a neighbor. The neighbor took Gibby to a shed and put his hand in a vise, and then yanked the fishing hook out with the pliers. Not necessarily textbook, but a great story. Mom loved living in the country, and growing up she had a horse, Brownie, which she absolutely loved. She always had a soft spot for horses in her heart. I still prefer country living to urban life and attribute that to having gotten to live in the country growing up. Mom also loved vehicles, and I got that bug from her too. She loved sports cars and had a '64 Mustang when she taught at Tuba City until she reluctantly had to sell it for a station wagon when Nina and I were young, almost a decade later. She was always admiring Mustangs and Mercedes and owning a few along with other great vehicles, from a Chevy Love truck, a custom van, another Mustang GT, Ford Taurus SHO, a couple of Mercedes, a couple Jeeps, and countless other cars and multiple big pickups. Her obsession with campers was a thrill too, going through the whole progression and having tens of thousands of miles and memories to go with them. There are a few stories of my youth that I think you'd enjoy. One was when Mom was registering for graduate courses in political science at the UW-Madison. The professor announced that there were a couple young children playing in the sprinkler on Bascom Hill. Well, turns out that would have been Nina and I. Later during the semester, Mom took us to Mifflin Street Block Party, which had a carnival atmosphere. It turns out I was good at the ring toss and kept winning pot brownies, which Mom kept confiscating. Another great story occurred a few years later when I was 11 or 12, and we heated by wood and were at a friend of Mom's cutting wood and loading it into a trailer with my friend Steve. He was bent over picking up a piece as Mom tossed another our way, and it clocked him right in the head. This resulted in an urgent care visit and a few stitches. Mom felt so bad and sheepishly returned Steve home. Steve now shaves his head and wishes the doctor had not been so stingy with the stitches and had put a couple more so his scar would be a little less obvious. We now refer to this episode as the incident. I was always proud of Mom and her accomplishments. She broke barriers in a male-dominated world, rising to executive positions in multiple utility companies and related industries. She was very good at team building, understanding and encouraging people's strengths, and knowing who worked well together for various tasks. People enjoyed working with her. She was successful at whatever she put her mind to, including a stint as a financial planner, which was a completely new field to delve into. Her involvement and effort also enabled the BLM land south of Santa Fe to become the Cerritos Hills State Park. It's no small feat. Mom was a great woman and mother, phenomenal, loving, intelligent, caring, gritty, and funny. Her legacy will live on through our endless love and memories we carry. She will always be missed and never forgotten.
Just got to say, I'm so glad to see this hat. This is a bit of herstory. A bit of herstory, not history. I met Claire and Harriet in 2000, having just moved here south of Los Cerritos from Colorado. From the very first, I knew Claire was a doer, capital D, a mover and a shaker, if you will. She was speaking at a very, very early meeting in Los Cerritos, advocating for 1,000 nearby acres to be designated as a Santa Fe County open space park. And she didn't stop there. I recognized from that first meeting and talking with Claire and Harriet afterwards what a dynamic, intelligent woman was in my presence. Thus began our friendship. The very early efforts towards this chunk of land had begun in 1997 with some community members in the village who recognized the special nature and historical character of our little hills and suggested doing something to preserve them. In November 1998, a bond initiative proposing purchases of private land in Santa Fe County for public use passed with a whopping 70% approval. The next year, a Santa Fe County open space park became a reality, and the all-volunteer Cerritos Hills Park Coalition was organized. On January 28, 2000, the county completed acquisition of 3 parcels totaling 1,116 acres to make up the park. The park contains some of the most intriguing lands in New Mexico. Claire was on this board and would serve many, many years as president. All the while, she was doing, moving, and shaking. But most of all, she was leading us to a place none of us could have dared dream for. Believe me, these were exciting times in our little village. We had a great and dedicated board. I was proud to be one of the members, and Claire was our fearless leader. From 2000 to 2003, the park was developed by Santa Fe County and the all-volunteer Cerritos Hills Park Coalition. Trails were built with a National Park Service grant, crews of youth corps and volunteers, signage, parking, a vault toilet that didn't appear. They were advocated for, planned, and executed with the coalition of Cerritos Hills Park and Santa Fe County. Claire was on top of all of these details. The park's grand opening as a Santa Fe County open space was in 2003, with Stuart Udall delivering the keynote speech. From 2003 to 2009, the park was managed by the Santa Fe County Open Space Department and members of the all-volunteer Cerritos Hills Park Coalition to help maintain the trails, present occasional programs, and even make runs to Santa Fe to buy toilet paper to keep the vault toilet stocked. Meanwhile, in 2006, the New Mexico State Parks Division, in response to House Joint Memorial Number 8, prepared a feasibility study regarding the creation of a new state park from several areas, and the existing Cerritos Hills Historic Park was one of them. The study found that the property met the criteria as a state park, so the division moved ahead with soliciting input through public meetings and an open comment period. And I might add, Galisteo and La Cienega turned it down. They were solicited also, but not interested for whatever their reasons were, so we got the plum. Most comments were in favor, locally, of creating the state park in our little hills, and in 2007, State Parks Department purchased 3 lots with 2 structures in the village of Los Cerritos for a visitor center. We had come a long, long way from the aspirations of a few that would benefit so many. State park personnel were present on site and began interpretive programming in the spring of 2009. In September, the State Parks Division entered into a joint powers agreement with Santa Fe County to manage the park as New Mexico's 35th state park. Money was allocated towards building a visitor center on the property in Cerritos. Ground was broken for that in the spring of 2001 for the visitor center, and the grand opening was on May 19, 2012. New Mexico State Representative Rhonda King was the keynote speaker, as she had spearheaded the creation of a park, and it ended up with us. So thank you, Claire. For your always kind, ever gentle, yet persistent leadership that helped our Little Hills Open Space Park be and grow into New Mexico's 35th state park. Thank you, Claire. I have many, many, many more wonderful memories, whether it be camping, sharing meals, their Sandoval 64 fame, their wedding here at this temple 6 weeks after that, all of their doggies, latte, probably before latte even, and following them in their travels and family visits in that series of RVs. Fly high. I'll see you someday soon.
What a woman. Today you've heard many wonderful stories about Claire. I want to add just a couple. I want to tell you about Claire's multiple religion journey. She grew up a Methodist, and her mom, interestingly enough, served as a Shabbos goy in their neighborhood. And early on, Claire followed her through the neighborhood to turn on the lights for all of their Jewish neighbors during that time. Claire next married a Lutheran pastor. As reported by her daughter, Claire was far more religious than her father. During that time of her life, Claire started being her really well-developed love of debate, intellectual at the dinner table. She made her husband a better Lutheran. A few years after Claire's divorce, as you already know, she married Harriet, a wonderful, beautiful, smart, Jewish lesbian. Claire, being Claire, never lost her love of curiosity and interest in religion. Early in their relationship, they attended a not temple, but a building transformed into a temple in Madison called, what was it called? Gates of Heaven. It was there that they had a commitment ceremony in the 1980s. Really about the time only commitment ceremonies were happening. It was in Madison where Claire and Harriet were active at the golden age of gay rights and women's rights. When they arrived in Santa Fe, they looked for a temple where their roots, their Jewish roots and identity, could land. They landed here at TBS. It was a time when gay and lesbian marriages were illegal. But we had different communications about where they might want to go to get married at some point, because it couldn't be done here. And then one day, in 2004, I get a call. Carolyn, you have to come right now. What? The Santa Fe County Clerk in Bernalillo is issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples, and we don't know how long it's going to be before they shut it down. Come now. I didn't have time to change out of my sweats. I grabbed my rabbi's manual and raced down there. It was a scene like no other. There were small groups of people with clergy in the middle. People were crying. People were laughing. People were cheering. It was phenomenal. By the time I got down there, I did 3 marriages. One was of a young couple who waited. They got their license. They waited for their 2 children to arrive. And unfortunately, never got their marriage license filed that day. So it didn't count. None of those licenses were ever challenged. It was the first time in New Mexico that gay and lesbian marriages had happened. A few months later, in this very sanctuary, in a sanctuary where rabbis weren't even doing some interfaith marriages, Harriet and Claire got married. Harriet wearing that very outfit. How many of you can do that? How many years later? TBS is where Harriet and Claire celebrated the high holidays. I still remember them, sitting right over there, always. It took 21 years for me to get another call at a transition in their life together. Claire was dying. I had a number of talks with Claire, and she was strong, fearless, and prepared for death. She only had 2 regrets. One was that she wouldn't have enough time with the people she loved. And 2, that in all the years that she was together with Harriet, no one saw her as Jewish. And she had spent 44 years of them doing things together in the temple, in the community, around their Jewishness. I knew I couldn't do anything about giving her more time to spend with her loved ones. But in that moment, I knew I could do something. So I said, Claire, you want to be Jewish? Tears streaming down my eyes, streaming down Claire's eyes, streaming down Harriet's eyes. And she said, more than anything. And I said, okay, why? And she had every reason in the book. She loved the intellectualness. She loved the fact that you can believe so many different things and still be Jewish and still be strong. She believed in the work that what she was doing in the communities was all because of her Jewish heart. So, in front of witnesses, I said, are you doing this out of your free will? And she said, yes. And she took the name Miriam. Strong, strong woman in the Torah. And for 1 week, our Claire was Jewish. I can't thank Claire and Harriet enough for those 2 moments in my life that changed my life, that offered the truth of who they were and what they were doing in this community and the truth that I could participate in with them. I'll never thank you enough. Before this celebration ends, Harriet and the rest of the family would love for you to join them in the social hall and share some stories, have some cookies, have something to drink, and see some amazing pictures of Claire's life. And finally, when cherished ties are broken and the chain of love is shattered, only trust and the strength of God can lighten the heaviness of the heart. At times, the pain of separation seems more than we can bear. But love of family and of friends, combined with understanding, can help us pass through the darkness towards the light. Out of loss, we learn the lesson of grief. And in truth, grief, I know, is a great teacher, especially when it sends you back to serve and bless the living. We learn how to counsel and comfort those who, like ourselves, are bowed with sorrow. We learn how to know when to keep silent in their presence and when a gentle word assures them of our love and our concern. Thus, this is what we're all required to do. Remember, the departed are with us, moving us to live as in their highest moments they themselves lived. We remember Claire now. She will forever live in our hearts. And she is and was and will forever be an abiding blessing. And remember, in Claire's words, we are all family.